All right, everyone, we're going to get started here.
Thanks everybody for coming out today. As we are approaching Thanksgiving, the demand for food, the demand for services in BC always spikes up, and it's something that I think should concern all of us. And certainly facilities, food banks, community kitchens are a big part of meeting the need across the province. I want to read out just a few stats as we start this off. There are about 107 different food banks across the province in British Columbia, not including community kitchens like the one we have here. And food banks, since 2019, there has been a 57% increase in the number of visits to food banks on an ongoing basis. 30%, in other words, 1 in 3 people that visit and use a food bank are children. When you look at the number of food banks, people visiting food banks, about 20% people visiting a food bank are seniors. And the reality is for food banks that donations have dropped almost 30% now. I was talking not long ago, I visited with the Guru Nanak Food Bank. They were doing a food drive at the time, and I went in and tried to help them, give a little bit of hand with that food drive. They have gone, since 2022, they've served about 7,300 people a day. They are now serving 18,000 people a day. It's an enormous increase in terms of the demand. And yet, for them as well, donations are not keeping up. They're struggling to meet that demand. And there's no barriers, they just do what they can to support people. What we are seeing here, quite frankly, across BC is a real tragedy, a real problem. When you think about it, half the people in this province are within $200 of not being able to put food on the table. Everybody is stretched, trying to do the best they can. And one of the reasons why donations are down is because people are getting more and more stressed with just trying to meet their day-to-day needs. Food costs have gone up 21%, wages and have not kept up. Affordability has continued to be a problem. And it's one of the reasons why just last year, the Food Banks Canada gave a scorecard to British Columbia, a D- in terms of meeting the needs of people in this province. That's not a good record for a province that has so much to offer so many people in British Columbia. So we're here today in front of the facility here to also talk about the struggles of this facility. Because of the inconsistency in funding and the inability of this government to be able to provide the resources, they may have to close providing foods for people by December 12th, just before Christmas, because they do not have the funding and they do not have the support to be able to carry that on. And I think, quite frankly, that's wrong. When I look at what we need to be doing as a province, we should make sure that we are looking after the most vulnerable in this province. One-time funding that comes from governments from time to time is helpful, but it's not consistent, and it will not be able to keep the doors open for facilities across the province. We need to be able to have consistent funding from the government to be able to support these facilities. I would much rather that these facilities weren't needed at all. I'd much rather that our province was far more prosperous, that people had better wages, that people could be able to put food on the table and provide for their families. But the reality is the struggles that we are seeing are going to continue. The growth in demand for facilities, for food in this province, for people that are desperate, is doing nothing but growing. So we need to be able to step up as a province, and that's why we are going to commit to consistent annual funding to be able to go towards food banks and community kitchens around this province to be able to support them in their efforts to make life as affordable as possible for people in British Columbia. We haven't set the amount that we're going to commit to it Our goal is to actually work with the food banks and community kitchens to do an assessment of the need that they have so that we can come up with a number that makes sense for them, and not just for what's happening today, but what the projection is for the next number of years as well, so that we can see that consistent funding coming in and make sure that people can get the services that are needed. So with that, I want to turn it over to Jack to say a few words about what we're trying to achieve here.
Thank you all very much for coming today. Thank you to John and his team for really being the impetus behind telling our story. As John said, December 12th, we are scheduled to close Surrey Welcome Hub that we fondly call Nourish, the community kitchen side. The shelter side will stay open, but this community kitchen serves over 225 people every single day, which is only 2 meals a day, breakfast and lunch. So that's over 6,000 meals every month. And that's needed. That is for the most vulnerable people, people who are on the street. It's the community kitchen. We've already lost, due to one-time funding, our hygiene unit, which is called the Cove Healthy Living, which was the only community and washroom facility, shower facility, and laundry facility here in Whalley. We had to close that at the beginning of September. So this is a much, much needed service, and we're very appreciative to John and his team for helping us tell our story. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Jack. So as we look forward, to Thanksgiving, there's a lot that we do have to give thanks for in this province. But the challenges that we've seen that have been built over the last 7 years, the failures of this NDP government have left people extremely vulnerable. To have a D- card in terms of the ranking for British Columbia, I just find completely unacceptable, which is why as a Conservative government, we need to just return back to common sense. We need to make sure that we can provide support for those who are most vulnerable, and that's what this announcement is about. And so with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you very much. For everyone on the queue, if you could please press *1, and we're going to go straight to the phone lines.